So a lot of times in our life, we have a breakdown of what I like to call total trust. This can happen in any of the pillars that we work with in Mugen Mindset. So for example, with spouse, you can have a breakdown of what we call total trust. You could have it in your work with your boss or with a colleague. You could have it in any of the pillars. And this is really important with our relationships with people, that we continuously develop this, again, what I call total trust, okay? And let me explain to you a little bit how this works. In this example that I have the other day, one of the coaches at one of my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu schools was teaching kids just like a normal day, and we have actually a system for developing total trust between the coaches, the kids instructors, and the kids themselves. And this coach had a crazy situation that's actually happens here and there every few months or maybe once a year, where a kid will just freak out with him or with any of the other instructors and run off the mat and just hug dad. In this case, it was dad, but sometimes they'll hug mom, crying. And it's just this wild situation of a breakdown between the kids instructor and the child, and between their, again, what I call total trust, okay? And so in this story, what happened was class was ending, kid was off in a corner and wasn't standing in line with the other children. So it's totally normal for the instructor to try to get all the kids in line, standing in their rest stance with their hands behind their back. And in this case, he picked up the kid's 5 years old, he picked him up by his arms and tried to put him back in line with the other children. Well, that was a little bit of a mistake with this kid, because what happened was his arms got completely stretched out and it kind of hurt his shoulders, kind of hurt his arms, didn't feel good to him. And so what happened was he freaked out, he started crying, he ran off the mat and hugging his dad, crying. And the coach realized at that moment that he had a breakdown between him and that child and their total trust, okay? So what happened, the reason why I say that there was a breakdown was the child had been with him for about 4 weeks. He's doing great in the classes. And in this case, because of the frustration of the instructor at that moment and them not being in line, he just wanted to make sure that there was a quick lineup and that he could finish off with the student creed and end the class perfect. And so by accident, he grabbed the kid who was 5 years old and lifted him, and he meant to do it kind of from underneath the armpits so it wouldn't really hurt. But what happened was he grabbed a little bit higher and he pulled him up and then put him back in the line. And with most children, it's not going to be a big deal. There's this huge trust between the instructor and them, and it's not going to be a huge deal, but this really hurt the kid's arms. So at this point, when he got back on the mat after crying, the coach got him back on. He said, "Are you okay?" And the kid said, "No, I'm not okay." And so then he realized that there was a little bit of a breakdown of this trust between the two of them, okay? So he asked him a few minutes later when they finished the student creed and they were shaking hands and everybody's giving a big hug. And he said, "Hey, Johnny, now you doing better?" And the kid said, "No, coach, I'm not. I didn't like when you grabbed my arms." So at this point, the coach, the instructor, knew that there was a breakdown of trust between the two of them, okay? And so we have a formula for dealing with that, and it's a really cool formula that I think you can use in your own life with any time that you feel that the trust was broken down between you and someone else. Any kind of relationship. Could be at work, could be at home, could be with a child, could be with a family member. So I think you'll be able to use this formula. This formula is broken down into 3 parts. The first part is quick communication. Quick communication is very important. Right away, you have to address the situation. This instructor, in this case, he asked the student, "Hey, can you come over to the front desk? We can just talk for a quick second, Johnny." This was really, really important. I've noticed in the past, when the instructor doesn't take care of the situation right away at that moment, what'll happen is the kid will go home, he's grumpy, and then when the dad asks him or the mom asks him to go to class the next day, the kid doesn't want to go. There's already been a breakdown of trust, and it's very, very tough to redevelop that trust without the number one part of the formula, which is quick communication. Right away address the problem. This, if it's happening in your life with a situation at work, with your boss, with your colleague, at home, with your spouse, with a family member, with your brother, sister, with your son, daughter, quick communication is very important. Address the situation right away. Number 2, real responsibility. Real responsibility is important. That means that you take real responsibility for what you did, not for what the other person did. So what the instructor said was, he said, "Hey, Johnny, you know what? I'm really sorry for grabbing your arms like that. I did not mean to do that. And I want you to know that that will never happen again. I really should have just asked you to come over to the line, and you've been doing so good in jiu-jitsu. You have been really, really one of the leaders in class. I think at that moment, I wasn't paying attention, and by accident, I turned around, and I really shouldn't have done that. So I hope you would forgive me. Would you forgive me, Johnny? And you know what Johnny said? He said, yeah, coach, I'll forgive you. I'll forgive you. Yeah, for sure. And so what was really cool was when the instructor had taken real responsibility, that means like 100% responsibility for what he did, then Johnny had nothing else to say. Whatever Johnny did, he was messing around in the corner. He should have been lined up. It didn't really matter. He knew at that point that he could trust his instructor. And so there was a rebuilding of that total trust, as we call it. And so you can do that as well with number 2, making sure that you take real responsibility for that, whatever the action was that you contributed to that situation, okay? And number 3 is future follow-up. Future follow-up is very, very important, okay? The following week, the coach, right away when Johnny had walked in, he grabbed him right away, walked over to him, and touched his shoulder and said, hey, Johnny, how's your day been? What have you been up to? And Johnny's like, oh, I've been good. I was at school. I'm so happy about my new friend, Joseph. And he starts talking about this new friend. It was awesome. Then the instructor grabbed his attendance card and said, hey, did you know you're still working on your commitment patch? That's going to be so fun for you. So what happened was this future follow-up, the number 3, is very important because the instructor didn't just leave it alone. He didn't just let Johnny walk in as a normal instructor, as a normal student that day, right? He knew that he needed to address Johnny right away to make sure that Johnny knew that the trust was going to continue, okay? And you need to do that as well. So if you're having this situation with your relationship with somebody at work or somebody at home, you need to make sure that there's a future follow-up, which is number 3, okay? So that means that not only when you took real responsibility and you did your quick communication with them, but what about the next time you see them? How are you going to treat them? Are you going to make sure that they remember and know that you're on their side, that there can be total trust between the two of you, that you guys are working together? That's really important for you. So remember that third one too, which is future follow-up. So here's the formula. 1, quick communication. 2, real responsibility. 3, future follow-up. And that's the way to build total trust.